Welcome to Turn Extension, a supplemental podcast for the Advanced Maneuvers YouTube channel.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Turn Extension. My name is Tony, or Polar Bear Cub on the forums.
Hey, it's Kevin.
This is Gaston.
Alright guys, so right now Devin is at a Adepticon. I almost called it a Capticon. It's both of them all merged together.
It's Adepticon, Capticon, all of the stuff merged in one place.
Yeah. So he might be jumping on the call later on. We were trying to get him earlier, but I know he's super busy. So if he cannot get on, there's still three of us that are going to talk. Alright, so one of the things I want to talk about first was Gaston. I actually played a game this past week.
I'm less surprised that Gaston played a game and more surprised that you know what dice are.
I know what dice are, and we played it on Vassal, which was interesting.
A learning experience.
It was. It wasn't as so. About a year or two ago, we played Vassal on Mark II. It had been actually about two or 3 years ago, actually, because yeah, it was because I played Darius. It was definitely Mark II rules because we couldn't pre-measure, and it was noticeably different being able to pre-measure on Vassal for Mark III.
Is that just because you could pull out specific widgets, or did they incorporate a grid to it, or?
No, so it's still like the really crappy measuring tapes, but the issue is whenever you're playing on a table, you can look and you can kind of eyeball the distances. Can't really do that on Vassal as easily unless you've trained yourself to do it.
Dude, all joking aside, I could not figure out what 8 inches was.
Yeah, it definitely took a lot of time. But back when Gaston and I played before, when we did, I remember I was playing Darius and 2 Stormwalls. I had missed a couple of good charges that I thought were in range. I had looked, I was like, I'm pretty sure these are in, and when I measured out, I was inches short. This time around though with Vassal, because we had the pre-measure, I was able to measure stuff out well beforehand, so I knew exactly where I needed to go. When I was going for, doing a long-range assassination, I knew exactly I had to go 14 inches or 13.9 inches. That's how far I had to go. So I knew the exact distance. We could actually measure out, see where stuff needed to go in order for that to happen. So
you're welcome, baby.
I appreciate it. It was a learning curve. It was definitely interesting to see it played out.
So what game did you end up playing?
So I played Locke in Crucible Guard, which I posted the feedback on the forum. And I played Locke because she's a Convergence and a Crucible Guard caster. For week 3, because by the time this comes out, her feat might have changed again. But for week 3, her feat dramatically changed to where now it's anytime an enemy model casts a spell or spends Focus or Fury or casts an Animi, a model in the battle group, or a model actually just gets a counter on it. And the counter adds +1 to armor, and you can charge for free and gain Pathfinder. Now, I don't think the feat is particularly strong. I think it's a weaker feat, but I really wanted to test out because I have a very vested interest in Locke. Even if I end up not picking up Crucible Guard, she still plays in Convergence, so I want her to be a good caster. Not broken, but I do want her to be good. And part of me seeing how good she could be is going to be dealing with her feet.
Do you see when you're looking at Locke and the design elements or the card and all that, do you see, because she's kind of like the Constance Blaze type where she can go into 2 different factions, is it a scenario of the abilities that she has can easily be played back and forth between the two, or do you see, like, when you look at her spell list, do you go, that's a Convergence spell, that's a golden, or not golden Crucible, Crucible Guard spell?
So I see some of them being very blended between, right? Because I think Tauros are a great warjack. And I think they did a lot with the suppressors. So a lot of her abilities with the Road to War and Redline are really, really good with Crucible Guard. I think her Engine of Destruction is very heavily handed towards Convergence because she can give her ability to +4 mat. Which one of the things that I talked about in my battle report was for her feat, I would like to see something with a + to mat. But my concern is that if that goes into Convergence, you could potentially have warjacks that have a mat of 10 or 11, which is just as bad for the game. So I'm not sure at this point what I would want to, how properly to fix it. Those were the suggestions I had, but then I also put, hey, this is a counterport that could also go really bad very quickly. Did that answer your question or no?
No, it definitely answered the question. I was just, you've been definitely giving Locke most of your attention. I was kind of curious about it, especially after playing the game. You know, if that kind of polarized it, or if it just confirmed it for you.
The issue was with her feet. We really didn't get a chance to do her feet. I got really lucky where Herman and I walked through to where I was able to get a top of 2 assassination, which is actually another point of feedback that I'd given, was I was able to have a Toro Road to War for 3 inches up, and then he had Redline on him, and he was able to charge 10 inches down the table, and I had a 2-inch reach. If I would have ran him, he could have potentially had, because it's +2 speed, so what? He would have had a speed 7, could have ran 14 inches, with the road to would have been 17, and he could have had a 2-inch reach afterwards, so that could have been a threat of 19 inches that Locke could have then walked up and jackhammered, if I could. So that was kind of the feedback that I gave is, hey, I love Road to War, which Gaston helped me kind of walk through how to do that because I'd never used Road to War before, so I didn't realize how powerful it was with infantry around, which is super powerful. It's amazing. But Road to War and Redline, I think it might be too good.
Because
that's a lot of movement, and if you think, and if let's say you put her in convergence, okay? So instead of giving one Warjack 5 inches of movement, I can give a Warjack 7 inches of movement because I could Road to War them 3 inches. They could get redlined, and then the diffuser can walk up and shoot something, and then now all of a sudden the inverter or whatever it is gets 2 inches of movement and a free charge because of the diffuser's shot ability. So that's a lot of additional movement. If it was in convergence, I more than double what a Warjack's normal movement is, which is scary. That's
I would actually argue something slightly different in that it's not Road to War and Redline, it's Road to War and Jackhammer that's the problem.
And that's true, yeah. Road to War and Jackhammer, they're very powerful abilities. Jackhammer is a great spell to have, which I think that it's definitely something I would love to have in Convergence. I didn't think I'd ever get it.
Would this be the first time Convergence gets a strength spell?
No.
Oh God, no.
No. Almost all of Convergence have some type of ability to boost either the damage or the strength. You have Mother that can do harm, Orion's feet, Axis has his feet, and Lucant has positive charge, so he can
positive charge.
Yeah,
God,
plus to Matt and yep.
Okay. So I guess
it's more just that it kind of factors into the way that I look at jacks when I strategize, which is once you get to a certain POW, stacking POW doesn't matter as much as number of attacks. So what you can do with the Toro is relatively cheap. You can stack Redline on him. You can stack whatever other buffs, debuffs they have in the faction. I'm sure there's quite a few.
Yep.
Rust, things like that. But then you can have him charge in. He kills his target. Then he moves 3 inches, so whatever's within 5 inches of that initial target that he kills, and then you can jackhammer again to kill a second target. That's where it becomes slightly problematic. Or you can just have him charge in, he does his 3 attacks, and then you ping him again for jackhammering like a colossal, something like that. I don't know that it's broken, but it's concerning.
I was going to say, at what point is, and it becomes, I guess, a very fine line in a potentially, perspective of opinion, but at what point does a warcaster's shtick cross over from this is, we want to give Convergence this special thing that they don't have anymore, this amazing extra movement that all the other casters don't have, from, okay, this is her shtick versus this should never be in the faction.
That's when you split them into 2 cards like Old Witch 2 and Old Witch 3. I mean,
which I almost wonder if that's the right thing to do at this point. That being said,
it's a possibility.
Fluff-wise, the only reason why I say it wouldn't make as much sense is because, well, actually, I think for balance sake, it might make more sense doing it that way. because the argument was with the old Witcher, one's doing Warjacks, the other one's doing War Beast, so it's a difference between Fury and Focus. But the reality is, she's really good, and my concern is if you balance her one way, it's either going to be really good for the other faction or really bad for the other faction. I think with how heavy Convergence is with their Warjacks, I think it changes a lot, and it's really... I'm still going to argue that maybe Engine of Destruction might be the thing that should probably be removed from her card, and that could help with a lot of balancing things, because then you could have a feat that could add plus to mat into your armor, and that could be very different, where Engine Destruction is awesome. I love having it in Convergence. I think that might be a thing that makes it, honestly, will probably be an issue for balancing her.
I'm mostly aggravated at PP for not figuring out Locke and McKay before this all dropped. Because, week one, it took nothing for it to be obvious.
I didn't think McKay, honestly, I didn't see McKay as being that powerful at first. I was wrong, obviously. And I don't know if they overbalanced her at this point. I don't know. I think they threw a bunch of things on her at the same time. Maybe should have been a little bit slower, but we'll see what happens. But Locke was pretty obvious out of the gate. Super broken with her feet.
So it's kind of like, what's a good example from a previous one? I forgot what I was playtesting, but it was something in the blind water that was so obviously too good. I just kind of rolled my eyes and didn't even bother with it. Yeah, I just moved on to something else because I was like, that's going to get changed in a week. It doesn't matter.
So now my argument, though, is I want to start playing Locke more because I have a very vested interest, and I said this earlier, I believe, is that I have a vested interest in how she performs and how she comes out of the CID. Because, like I said, if I don't pick up Crucible Guard, I'm still going to play Convergence, and she is a caster that I will be playing. So I want to make sure I'm giving good, solid feedback, which stinks in a way because I don't get a lot of games in. So it's going to limit my potential games with other Warcasters to see if I enjoy the faction enough. Until after CID.
That was the counterpoint I was going to make.
Yeah, and
is that, you'll be so busy playing Locke, you don't even know what Lucas does.
I know, and that's kind of a concern, but I almost wonder if at this point it might be the right one, because if you looked at the first 2 weeks, right? Even the first three, because it was week 1, week 2, and week 2.5, there was a ton of tests of just McKay. I think almost half of the testing was just McKay. And there wasn't a whole lot of anybody else. So there's not a strong balance, at least looking at the battle reports. There's always that feedback form that is very different. We don't know how much is getting sent to PP just through that feedback form. I just want to make sure that Locke comes out playable in Convergence as well as Crucible Guard.
Well, and maybe we won't know this until the cards come out, but Locke was also the one that had the rules where she could take Crucible Guard Jacks in, even though she was a Convergence caster, correct?
She could take Tauros and Vanguards.
Okay. So when you come out of the CID, say you give all of the CID attention to Locke, and you decide, you know what, maybe Crucible Guard's another thing for me, you could easily buy into Locke and the Jacks that you can, get a feel for it, and then potentially after you've played Locke for a while, after Crucible Guard's been out for a while, or you have a second thought of it, hey, maybe I do want to get Crucible Guard, then you can buy into the rest of the faction with the knowledge of, I'm kind of already there, I just need to get these 3 or 4 things to try this other list. Or, I think McKay is probably going to be the exception if she goes the route of, I'm the battle engine caster and my list always looks like McKay and 2 other battle engines.
Well, she's a battle engine caster without any ability to affect the battle engine except for her feats in a limited capacity. Because now she doesn't give anything to the Railless Interceptors. She's not a veteran leader for them anymore.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
I haven't been following the CID that much. I wasn't aware of that.
No, so they removed her veteran leader ability, and they changed her feat where before it was as long as your friendly model was in her control area, they gained boosted damage, to where now the enemy model has to be in her control range to gain the boosted damage.
Okay.
So.
But it doesn't necessarily avert from the fact of you already have convergence, a sizable convergence army
Mhm.
with experience of convergence. So getting Locke and getting the jacks she could use doesn't take you away from the faction that you are, and then you can go towards this quote unquote new CG faction after you've gotten like it's almost one of those things where the higher end people are always like, take one caster and play them 100 times before you can say that you know the caster.
Right.
So you could theoretically
Oh
do
my
that.
god, that sounds so fucking boring.
Right? But you could play Locke a bunch of times and be like, okay, I understand how Locke works in Convergence. Now I want to try my hand in Crucible Guard, and my next obvious evolution is I'm just going to play Locke and Crucible Guard, and then from there go to,
Silvestro!
Silvestro or the Baldwin or whatever the case might be.
Oh man, the new Baldwin looks amazing. They can play rework this card. But yeah, no, and that's the thing is I like that idea. I'm pretty sure I'm going to buy into Crucible Guard. Granted, I only played the one caster, but I've been building a lot of lists and I've been looking at a lot of their stuff, and I'm a lot more interested in the faction than I thought I would be. I'm just liking their synergies with their units. I really like some of their backgrounds that they have. Just like how their playstyle is going to be, and really how I think the casters are a big powerhouse, which you get that with Convergence. I haven't really felt that though as much as when I'm playing with these guys.
So I'm curious. You say you're interested in CG. Between the three categories of lore, model, and gameplay, give me a pie chart of give me a percentile of those three categories. How much in CG is each category?
Are you talking about do I rank them? What's my favorite, least favorite?
Yeah, your interest in Crucible Guard is 20% lore, 30% models, 50% rules.
So I would say it's a good 70% rules right now, and usually it's 20% of. You know what? I would actually do what you say. Half of it is what their models do, because I really like how their models look. I still don't know a whole lot about their background. They did a lore watch yesterday, and they really didn't deep dive too much about the Crucible Guard specifically. It was more so about the Golden Crucible, how the Golden Crucible was made, and I already knew that stuff. So I think it's interesting, but it's not pulling me as much as I think the way their models look are interesting. So I'd say 60% gameplay and 15-15 for the other two.
Okay, so now I want you to think back to when you were playing when you were interested in Convergence.
I absolutely hated the way their models looked.
Okay.
I still to this day I do not like the way the Convergence looks. The only model I ever liked is Axis. That was the only model I've ever appreciated in Convergence. I hate everything else about them, the way they look.
You're so weird. I love Art Deco.
I hate it. I hate it. But I love their rules. There was definitely, for me, 80% was their rules, 15% was the background, and maybe obviously 5% was, that's the only thing that's left over. Is 5% was the way their models looked, and that 5% was solely Axis.
So it sounds like in both of these situations that your draw towards your armies hasn't necessarily been from the majority hasn't been the way the models looked or the way the lore was. It was strictly, these rules look awesome and I'm going to play. To the point of your Convergence is, these rules look awesome, and even though I absolutely hate the way the models look, I'm going to basically main this army.
Yep. Yeah, and it's funny because it was actually the opposite of Signar. Signar, I got into them because I loved their story. I loved the way they looked. Gameplay came afterwards, and that was partially because I was brand new to the game. So that's something you kind of always look for first what model looks cool. I always like to look at backgrounds, and Kane was the reason I got into Signar. So it's very different when I first got into the game as to where I'm playing now.
Which is interesting, because if that's the case, and here you are potentially contemplating selling your Signar, is this a scenario of have you been playing Signar merely because it's the first love, or have you been playing Signar because you actually enjoy playing Signar? It sounds like you haven't. You just kind of kept your first love around.
I mean, that's kind of what it is. I loved Signar. Signar was the reason I got into the game. I love the story of Kane. But every time, the more I've played Mark 1, I think I did well, but it was also Mark 1 rules were absolutely crazy. Mark 2, I did decent, but did not progress as much as when I played Convergence. I played maybe Convergence a handful of times before I went into a tournament, and I walked into that tournament and won third place. First real time I actually played them. So they clicked a lot more than Signar ever did, but I love Signar, but every time I play Signar, I barely win with them. It just does not make sense to me how to play them. And it frustrates me because they do a lot of things that I want them to do, like that I like playing, like Cray. Cray can run Centurions really well. But there's other models I just cannot get to work properly, or I make stupid mistakes and I can't fix them as well as I can in Convergence.
So everywhere that I hear, they always tell the new players, find what you like, find what looks cool to you and play that, because the end justification is if you don't like what you're looking at, you're not going to ever want to continue to play. Are you the exception to the rule in that you're actually playing things you don't like the look of, with the exception of Crucible Guard? Or is it just a case of that kind of carte blanche blanket statement of find what you like and that's what you'll play? Is that a fallacy? And we really shouldn't be telling new people that. We should be telling them you need to look at all the factors, the models, the lore, the gameplay, in order to make sure that is your faction to play.
I think at first you should play what you like. If I didn't start playing Signar, I never would have continued on with the game. Granted, when I started playing Signar, Convergence was a good 8 years out until it was a thing. But at the end of the day, if I didn't start playing Signar, I never would have stayed with the game, never would have become PG, never would have met with you guys. If I would have picked up Protector or Kador, probably wouldn't have played the game afterwards after too long. I do think that we should still tell people play what looks cool to you, because you play what looks cool to you, get interested in the game, you start seeing other armies, and if you see another army you like their play style more, well then you could switch to that army. But at least at first you played something that you enjoyed the way they looked, and you enjoyed the way that it seemed like they would play, and then that's a good gateway to getting into more in depth of what you want to play. I mean, I think that's a great argument still, is to still tell people play what you want to play, what looks cool at first.
Do you agree with that, Gaston?
Sorry, I've been painting gator armpits. Yeah, no, I mean, I pretty much pick my factions about 60% aesthetic, 40% rules, and 0% lore. Because I don't really know what any of the game lore is.
And you're still at 0% lore?
Yeah, it's only been 8 years. So it took me, 3 years before I realized that the Protectorate's mean to people?
Yeah, I think it did.
So I was like, well, what are you guys talking about?
The dude strapped up on the rack wasn't a dead giveaway?
I thought they were volunteers.
Are you serious?
Who volunteers to be strapped to a rack?
I'm pretty sure that's a thing.
No, that's not a thing. Don't make that a
it's-
thing.
That's never been a thing.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
Do you have any lore to back that up?
Yeah,
That's
That's
actually.
what I thought.
Book.
Yeah, it's called, literally the Protectorate book, or the description of what that model is.
I know what I'm buying you for Christmas this year.
Is it the Protectorate book?
Yup.
No, I mean, it's just you're going to be staring at that model's butt for a really long time, so if you're going to be playing it, you better like the way it looks.
The way you phrase that just changes things drastically when you're like, dragon spawn butt. Yeah.
But I don't like Dragon Spawn butt. A little too spiky for me.
They're into all kinds of whips and chains and tentacles and shit.
Yeah, but
So-
like gators, they got a nice soft underbelly.
Yeah, Jesus. I'm going to stop this before this goes down a dark road. So I guess it becomes a situation of, you guide people based on what their looks, but it sounds like, Tony, for you, though you got into the game based on looks, you ended up settling on something that was more based on rules. Like, you fell in love with the rules more than the aesthetic.
I mean, yeah, what got you into playing them?
Wait, got me into playing what? Or
What
who
got-
into playing where?
What got you, Herman, into playing Protectorate at first?
The look of the models.
Oh, okay. So it still was the look.
Yeah, I cracked open the pictures and I looked at them and I'm like, ooh, I like the way that looks. And then before I made any purchases at all, I played 5 test games to make sure I liked the way they played. And I was torn between them and Crix, and I decided I liked them better. And I literally picked them over Crix because of the way they looked.
And deep down, we all know that he is Crixian at heart.
Well, back in the day, like when Ironlick W kicked my ass one time when I was first learning the game, I'm like, Denny 2 is busted and all that. He's like, all right, well, let's swap armies. Kicked his ass right back, and I'm like, proof is she's busted.
Oh,
Well, that's no better than my first demo game.
which was
My
what?
first demo game was P. Krios versus Denny 1. Is that right? That sounds right. I was using Tyranids.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Did Iron Lich run that demo, or?
Oh, no, it was against someone who was just starting the game alongside me.
Oh, okay, so we're talking different scenarios when Iron Lich was beating you.
Oh, yeah,
No.
that was like years later.
Oh, okay. So have you done an army swap lately to prove that she's still busted?
No, I mean, the last time I played him was, I think it was Epic Barney into Jaga Jaga.
Oh, that's pretty recently then.
Oh, yeah, and then we also did the Epic Barney into Terminus game where I was a dingbat and played poorly.
Oh.
Kind of like that one time I was playing against Locke, and Jaga Jaga walked right up into someone's threat range.
Hey man, I appreciate the sacrifice you made so that I can learn the army.
It worked out pretty well because you needed to go, so...
It did work out really well because I did need to go.
But no, I mean, cycling back to buying armies, things like that, when it comes time to like buy a new army, I'm very deliberate in my process where I want to make sure that I'm putting in capital. It's a capital investment to me. It's a lot of money. I want to make sure that I'm getting my value back out of them. So let's say, it takes me $1,000 to buy a new army. I'm going to go to eBay. I'm going to buy everything used that I possibly can. I'm going to take some Rust-Oleum, spray it over, and be done with it. Like, seriously, that's why my red's black. It's black Rust-Oleum. But then I look at the amount of money it costs me and the amount of time I'm going to get back and where my break-even point is. So to me, I kind of set it at like $10 an hour is where I want to be at. And, it's like if you go see a movie, it's 2 hours and $20. So it's a nice little average. And that works out to me to be I need to be playing about 50 games with a faction to get what I feel like is my money's worth out of it.
Okay.
And you look at Minions, I've had Minions for 8 years. And, last year I played 44 games with it. So, round that up to 50 times 8, I've certainly made my money back on them.
What about your Retribution?
They're a lot harder. I don't think I've actually crossed the 50 game mark with them because Minions became a lot more intriguing.
Huh.
With,
I'm surprised with that.
I also, my amount of free time decreased significantly.
Oh, okay.
And when I only have one game a week, it's typically going to go to Minions. Although I have started building Assyria lists again. I kind of want to fiddle with her in Dawn Guard theme a little bit because it seems really intriguing with her ability to shut down your opponent's shooting so that way you can deliver the Sentinels. And then also she's got Crusader's Call to speed them up, so if you trigger Vengeance, then they're going to charge 15 inches. And she has a Signs of Importance feat, and you have some Invictors, and I have a min unit of them with UA, so they're range 14, Signs of Importance, ignore stealth, they can pick some stuff off. I don't know, it seems intriguing. I want to put it on the table.
So I'm curious about you. You're talking about the dollar values of new armies and stuff like that, and I'm kind of curious as to, is there a best approach to starting a new army in both of your opinions? Like, is it best to just go whole hog, buy $500 worth of models, or is it best to like buy $25 worth of models a week and then basically reward yourself every week with a model?
In my opinion, buying an army is like buying a used car, or just buying a car in general. You do your test drive, you do your research, you know what you're going to get, and then you buy it used because you're never going to get your money back out of it.
I gotta agree with that actually. I definitely think that, and also I think buying in smaller chunks is maybe a good idea. That way that you can, you play test. Like that's kind of one of the reasons I bought. I got all of those counter things pretty much. It's all proxy basis for the entire faction. So that way that once the idea is done, I could use the most updated rules and I can start playtesting them. I can decide, hey, this is what I want. Let me start building my lists because Crucible Guard's going to come out. It's all going to be brand new. I can't buy anything used. So I'm going to have to plan my purchases out a lot more strategically to see what I want to play, what I can get painted, because I can't go at this point and blow all of my money on a new army. So I think it will be, play like what Gaston said, playtesting and then seeing what you can invest in.
And I definitely take the opposite approach where, I'm also at a point in my life where I have the money that I can do that, where the more you buy in a lot, I feel like the cheaper it is. So if you buy in smaller chunks, you're maybe paying 50% MSRP. When you're buying in a larger chunk, you're putting up more money, but it's maybe 30% MSRP. And you're just filling in small gaps.
I was gonna say that's pretty obvious with the way like Privateer Press does their all-in-one. Like if you can get all-in-one boxes that fit the what you need, those are really substantial and benefit. And if you get an all-in-one on eBay, it's even more so.
That's true,
and that's where like seriously, I'll just look at the $1,000 lots that people sell and just get the whole faction at once.
God, I really
but that's after I've tried it.
I need to put up my Signar on there.
I'm sure they'll sell quick.
I'm hoping they will, man. I gotta actually start taking pictures and putting them up. I've decided at this point I think I am gonna end up selling them. I tried to sell them at some point, but I gave a crazy deal. Did not work.
It's kind of like with Grimkin. Like I had looked really long and hard about whether or not I wanted to get a Grimkin, and I eventually decided if I wait a year, they're going to be on eBay, and then I can decide then. And they'll be cheap.
Oh yeah. And then what? Almost a year later,
I'm not that
Devin ended up picking up an army at an insane discount.
Yeah, he ended up. I think it was Grimkin actually.
Yeah, it was Grimkin. Yeah, he got it 30% off almost.
So there's a question for you that kind of dovetails into Crucible Guard. If you really if you're not like Tony and you're maybe I want to get in Crucible Guard, maybe I don't. Is it best just to hold off a year and then try and get it on the cheap when people are trying to get out for the next new army?
I would.
Yeah, 100% I would.
So is this going to be this cyclical thing where, Grimkin comes out, somebody sells their Grimkin to pick up Crucible Guard, then they sell the Crucible Guard to pick up whatever the next one is, and then sell the so on, and just continues selling to purchase the next one, and thereby the second hand is picking up the it just becomes the the human centipede of used models.
Every meta has a Kevin.
This is true. Most metas have lots of Kevins.
That's true.
What army are you playing this afternoon?
Nothing at the moment.
What are you looking at playing? Because you are the king of picking up new armies. We should be asking you these questions.
I know, it's interesting to watch him try to psychoanalyze you instead of himself.
I know.
You assuming that I'm not psychoanalyzing for my own agenda.
I figured you were getting a little side Benny out of it.
I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I'm not thrilled about any faction, but at the same time, it's all right. So anybody the two guys on this channel and anybody on the cast already know this, but anybody who's listening, I am a very odd duck when it comes to games and armies. 1 minute,
it's such a huge pain in the ass.
It really is.
1 minute I can be like, I'm really not interested in this game, and an hour later I could be like, I am totally buying in on Crix. I'm buying the whole damn faction. And it
I won't dojo with him anymore because I don't know. It never seems to last past that hour.
That's really
it's great.
bad.
It's great dojo during that hour though.
Yeah, I've given you a ton of ideas that never see the table.
Fact. I don't know. It's just I've been on an eternal. Most of the members of this cast have a faction that they immediately associate with. Minions with Gaston. It's kind of a combination of either Scorn or Circle with Fort. Donnie was for the longest time Trolls, but he's been dabbling in Legion. You've got Convergence with Polar Bear, trolls with Devon. It's everybody's got their faction. I have never once in the how long have we been doing this? 5 years?
Yeah.
Yes.
Never once in 5 years felt this is my faction and it solves all Wanderlust. Like I've never had a faction where I'm like, I don't care about the other factions because I've got mine.
Well, here's the
closest-
thing, Kevin, is like, you think I don't get one. You think I wasn't looking at those Iosian Deepkin or whatever the hell they're called this morning?
The what?
The New Age of Sigmar stuff.
What, mate?
They're like
You're
elf
talking
mermaids.
A completely different game.
Yeah.
They're riding a turtle into battle, like a sea turtle with 6 fins and a ship on it.
A sea
Into
turtle with
battle.
6 fins that flies through the air even though it's a sea turtle.
It is fucking awesome. So like you think that I don't have this wanderlust, but it's kind of like, you know, being married for 30 years. It's just kind of like, you know, I've got this. And that's you know, you look at that and then you don't buy it. And it's that easy.
Yeah, it's not that easy.
Hey, so it's easy for
Come to
people
my
that,
house and look in my garage. It's not that easy.
So it's easy for
This
people
feels
who
like
don't-
an invitation to put on the lotion.
Yeah, it's easy for people who don't have an addiction, Kevin.
Fact?
That's a huge fact.
Do I not have an addiction?
I've never denied that I have a plastic crack addiction or a resin addiction.
Well, I
or
would say addiction to buying new armies.
I'm just one of the things though is if you're gonna, you know, settle down and raise a family with an army, you need to also make sure that it's deep enough that roster wise that you can do that. Like I think Protectorate right now in Mark III is incredibly deep. I think Minions, now that they've kind of tweaked a few things, is very deep. Convergence is obviously shallow. Sorry.
No,
I was going to
is.
say, I would think if you stay away from the mini factions, which, you know, Cephalix, damn you, I think all of the mainstay factions in Warmachines and Hordes are deep to some extent. I think Retribution even has gotten to a point where I feel like they're deep with all of the releases that they've just recently got.
I would put them at like 75% deep.
I think
3/4
Retribution's
deep.
problem is their themes, not their bench.
Yeah, the themes are very limiting and frustrating.
So if you
But
take
it's not a big
themes
deal.
off the table, their bench is still deep.
I'd agree with that.
So it's really, I mean, like if you choose a mainstay, you'll get a deep. It's just stay away from the not so mainstay. And that's actually something that I'm kind of curious how it's going to evolve. Is it going to get to a point where Grimkin players just continually struggle because the rest of the factions have evolved past them?
Well, that's kind of the argument for releasing them at like if 50% is balanced, you release them at like 55%. So that there's not dead weight in the faction, so that they're a little bit better. Not enough to give you like an overwhelming competitive advantage, but enough that as time goes on, they'll age gracefully. Like you can make a very good argument that Convergence has aged very gracefully. Exelon Thexus has aged very gracefully. I mean, these are things that are now almost half a decade old. And people are still going, they're still playing, they're still winning with them.
Maybe. I don't know about the Cephalix one, but yeah.
Exelon Thexus is incredibly strong.
Exxon thinks is strong. The issue with that is that they weren't released as a new faction, like what they probably should have been. They probably should have been their own separate faction. They were released as mercenaries, which puts them at a huge disadvantage because they're competing with mercenaries.
I was going to say they're not. They are released in mercenaries, but they are not released with mercenaries. There's very little crossover when it comes to mercenaries. I, to this day, will hold firm that Cephalix was the play test for a micro faction to see how well would this thing that does not interact with others perform and be adopted by the community.
Yeah, but Convergence.
And I don't
came
think anyone would
before
argue
that.
with you. No, Convergence was the year after Cephalix.
No, they were not. Convergence
Negative.
was first.
They came after because when you were going through the summer league with Cephalix, was when we were seeing the Convergence models.
I'm
Boom!
pulling up the books because I'm positive.
You
that
got old man
Convergence-
memoried.
I'm pulling up these books. I'm positive that Convergence came out first.
All right.
How does
before
it feel, Granny?
Hold on. Before you open that book, dollar bet.
All right, Dollar bet, man.
bet. All right.
Okay, hold on. I'm trying to figure out the best way to pull this up. Let me see if I have the books.
This is really exciting to listen to.
Yeah, it's fantastic radio.
All right.
I think to your point, Herman, like, I understand what you're saying. Like, you need to pick a deep faction. You need to get that. How do you go into a faction, find the faction that you want, buy the faction, and not immediately 2 weeks later get buyer's remorse because something new came out at Gen Con?
Because, okay, why do you get Wanderlust? Is it lore? Is it rules? Is it aesthetics?
Most of the time it's aesthetics.
So why don't you look at the spread of aesthetics within each faction and pick the one that has the largest variety? So that way, if you are aesthetically tired of one section, you can easily turn to another section within that faction, comparatively like Mana Wars to Greylord Turnian.
I think Privateer Press has done a relatively good job of making sure that every faction has a broad aesthetic, or at least 2 or 3 aesthetical branches that you can form off of.
I agree with that.
So
and that's what I'm trying to direct you to do, is to judge factions based on the variety that you can create within them, because it'll fight your Wanderlust.
So, Cephalix came out August 2014. You ready for when Convergence came out? July 2013, bitches. Who's the fucking man? I'm the lore, motherfucker.
I don't
actually not
cite your resources.
So, when Convergence was first announced, it was at TempleCon, because you guys were all there at the time, because I was very jealous that you guys got to go. Cephalix came out a year later afterwards. So when you're talking about that summer lead, they're actually introducing the Cephalix. The post for Cephalix was August 14th, 2014 from Privateer Press, where they talked about the digital release book is available. The year before, and this is Wikipedia, so this is what could be an issue, it says Force of Warmachine Convergence of Sirius came out July 2013.
I think Wikipedia is a shaky resource. I want a second opinion.
Okay,
I feel like you just edited that.
I want the listeners to do the research for me and save me my dollar and my pride, please.
That makes Convergence only 3 years into Mark II, which seems weird.
Yep. I'm telling you, man. Okay, so I actually just went on to Privateer Press's website, and it says release date July 10th, 2013, Convergence of Sirius. Suck it, bitch. God, it feels so good to be right.
Damn it.
Oh.
Damn it.
God. Oh, it feels so good. Oh, just suck it.
All right.
You know what?
I think I'm done with this,
I
guys.
really wish instead of betting $1, because I knew I was right, I should have betted what faction you would play next.
Do that anyway.
It was a real missed opportunity on my part. God damn it.
He owns it. Just do it anyway.
Yeah, you'll own it anyways. You already own all the factions. Oh, I mean, you can get a third opinion if you want. Get a second opinion, double check. But July 10th.
No, I want some sleuthing research agents within our fandom to, within the listeners to prove you wrong. Please prove him wrong.
I think I love it even more because both you guys told me I was wrong, and I knew I was right. Oh man, one thing you should never question me on is when stuff comes out for Privateer Press.
No, I will legitimately.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm always going to question
that comes out your mouth.
I'm doing a dance over here, just to let you guys know, because I'm that good.
Are you doing a dance or are you doing your voiceovers?
I'm doing a dance and my voiceovers.
I think we're done, gentlemen.
Let's end on a low note.
that I won. All right, guys. I want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Turn Extension. Have a good one.